Okay, so week 2 of the NFL regular season so far has come and went, and I wanted to share my thoughts today about some teams, takeaways, all of that. I wanted to wait 2 weeks because week 1 is really where overreactions happen. Week 2 as well, and I'll probably have some overreactions today, but I'm going to try to be as analytical as possible. So let's do that. This is Son of a Sports. Welcome back to football. We'll go through this looking at the lens of games from week 2, talking about each team through those games. So starting off with Packers-Commanders, our Thursday night game. Commanders, I think there's some things to be scared of in terms of Marshall Lattimore has not played the level you want. The offensive line, they're not healthy, but they haven't looked as good as you've wanted them to. It's definitely limited Jaden. They need to be as cautious as possible with his knee injury because his long-term health is 10 times more important than maximizing the window with these older guys. But right now, their roster's age is starting to show a little bit. We'll talk about that more as the season progresses and see how that really plays out. With the Packers, I think this is a very clear Super Bowl caliber team. Micah Parsons adds so much to this defense. They're insanely fast. And a thing to note, Micah Parsons has never played with a front seven as talented as this one. He's never played with a linebacker behind him in Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker. So the people that were nervous about their run defense, I don't think have to be as much because Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker are much better than anything Dallas had to offer linebacker-wise for Micah. And Rashawn Gary, on the other side, is a much better pass rusher than DeMarcus Lawrence was. I'm very excited to see what this Packers team looks like, especially offensively. They've looked pretty solid so far, and I'm excited to see how Jordan Love grows with Matthew Golden. Cowboys-Giants, moving on to the Sunday games. It was a shootout. I think both teams walk away feeling worse about their defenses and feeling more confident in their offenses. I think Dallas knows Dak Prescott is the guy for him, and Dak Prescott's probably my MVP 2 weeks in just because of how good he's been on tape. I think his connection with George Pickens is only going to get better. Dallas's offense has looked much better 2 weeks in than much better play calling wise. Schottenheimer has coached 2 really, really good games offensively. Defensively, I think Matt Eberflus has really struggled as a play caller, but I also think the personnel for Dallas has been weak all around, specifically their linebacker core. It is an issue right now. Kenneth Murray is not an NFL level starting linebacker. For the Giants, I think in what you saw in week 2 is much more of what you were expecting from Russell Wilson and Malik Nabers than what you saw in week 1. And you have the hardest schedule in the league. It is going to be a rough year no matter what. But what you can hope for is that you keep seeing your guys grow and progress. Darius Alexander got some play in week 2 that he didn't get in week 1. I'm excited to see what this team looks like offensively with Andrew Thomas back. It might not be perfect. It might not even be league average, but they'll be better. Moving on to Titans-Rams, I think the big takeaway you can take from the Titans 2 weeks in is Cam Ward has looked really good on tape. I think the one thing you can criticize him for so far is the pocket presence and how he is there. Not only was that mentioned in his draft profile that was a weakness, that was going to be something he struggles with at the NFL level. He's also a rookie, so it's going to be some time. It's going to take some time. It's not like the offensive line's doing him any favors. I think the Dan Moore signing has not worked out well for them so far. He has looked absolutely awful. Titans fans should be furious about how bad he's played. I think Yamanor looks way better than his draft position, and that connection with Cam Ward is something I am very, very looking forward to see grow. The play calling in week 1 was not great. The coaching in week 1 was not great. I think it improved in week 2, and the Rams 2 weeks in easily look like an NFC championship contender for me. I think everyone knew that going into the year, but their defense has looked incredibly solid, and their offense, Matthew Stafford looks better than he did last year, and he looked really, really good last year. Bengals-Jags. We'll start with the Jags. I think Liam Cohen has coached pretty good so far 2 weeks in. I think the pass defense needs to look better the way they allowed the Bengals to get back in that game, and also the Bengals throwing 3 picks from Jake Browning. But I think 2 weeks in, they look pretty good. Offensively, they have been much more better coached than they were last year. I think Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence both have had some misses here and there. A lot of people have criticized Brian Thomas Jr., and I think it's some form of the yips and probably a wrist injury. And he definitely looks scared of contact, and everyone's like, that's how you get paid. That's how you play in this league. But there are plays where Tyler Lockett went for balls, went for difficult plays, and people keep pointing out that comparison. He didn't flat out give up on plays. He just went down early. That's what he did. Larry Fitzgerald, who played for a long time that people keep comparing that to, he still fought for the ball. I mean, there was a play, Brian Thomas Jr. straight up just looks at a fumble. He's like, okay, I'm not going to put my body on the line. And the hospital ball thing, oh my God, please shut up with that. Oh my God. But Trevor Lawrence, yeah, he has to be better. And he threw 2 picks against the Bengals. But I think he had 2 good games so far. I do. I think Travis Etienne has looked better than he did last year. I think the rushing offense looks better than they did last year. I just want to see Brian Thomas Jr. play to the level we saw at the end of last year. With the Bengals, you got to feel discouraged about the rest of the year. Seriously. Jake Browning, I mean, not having Joe Burrow hurts. And Jake Browning is a serviceable backup quarterback, but a backup quarterback is not the guy that's going to take this team to the playoffs and put them in contention. What you can feel confident about is that you're 2-0, and that's not something you've been starting at the beginning of the season in a long time. Jamar Chase did not really play to his level with Jake Browning 2 years ago when Browning finished the season that you would expect of him. So I'm a little concerned, but I'm also feeling a little bit better about Browning and Chase because of how they finished that game. Maybe that connection lasts, and maybe Burrow can come back in December and play good enough to get in the playoffs. But the AFC is competitive, and I'm sorry, Bengals fans. Bears-Lions. For the Lions, I think a lot of people overreacted to Ben Johnson in week 1, not having him and Aaron Glenn. What you can look at with this Lions team and say that they're missing is mostly interior offensive line, especially offensively specifically. Frank Ragnow retiring hurts, and they're having to start Graham Glass now on the interior. They're going to have to start 2 rookies in their interior, running between the tackles. It's going to be harder. It just is. They looked explosive like they did throughout all of 2024 in this week 2 against the Bears, and that's what this offense is capable of still. I still think that's in there. I think Goff had a bad game in week 1, and they're getting used to the new coaching staff. Defensively, Calvin Shepard coached a very good game. I think this defensive unit is just gelling back together and getting back from injuries, and they looked really good against the Bears. And for the Bears, 2 weeks in, I'm not concerned about Caleb Williams. I think he's shown improvements to where I can feel confident enough in him going forward. And I think Ben Johnson has coached well enough that you feel confident in what he can do as a coach. What I'm concerned of is where the roster investment has gone into, because defensively, they have struggled. I don't think it's just Dennis Allen. It's the lack of talent on the defensive line. It's the fact that 2 years ago, when they tanked 2023, they went and spent the money on 2 middle linebackers that have not played to the levels that you want from them. And without Jalen Johnson, this defense is not going to be above league average. They're going to be below league average for the rest of the year if he's out for the year. And I think he is. That hurts your entire season because you don't have a quality edge rusher right now that can get to the quarterback. Montez Sweat has not played to that level in a year and a half. Offensively, you just want to see what this season can look like with Caleb and Ben gelling. DJ Moore and Rome Odunze look like they have that connection with Caleb. I am iffy on their draft picks considering how they're not getting involved in this offense so far. Loveland was a top 10 pick, and he has not been used. And Tyler Warren, a guy selected a few picks after him, has been used. I'll talk about the Bears more in another video. I probably will do one specifically about the Bears. But right now, I think the big bad guy of the Bears is Ryan Poles. Then we talk about Steelers-Seattle next. I think Aaron Rodgers has looked good 2 weeks in. I think the offensive line outside of Project Jones has held up just fine. I think even without being mobile whatsoever, Rodgers' arm is still there. He's looked better than I thought by a lot. I think Metcalf and him have to gel better. I think Metcalf has to get open better, which has been an issue over the last few years. I think the receivers in week 1 definitely showed out, but in week 2 struggled. I think the issue with the Steelers right now is the defense. I think Watt hasn't played at the level you wanted him to. I think Cam Hayward needs to play better. These guys just got paid. And I'm not a big pocket watcher guy. I want players to get paid all the time. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're playing to the level that you need them to, that they're playing to where they were paid to play. I think Jalen Ramsey has been probably the one good DB on this defense right now. I think Joey Porter Jr. has not played at the level you want. I think Darius Slay has not played at the level you want. I think this defense all around has just not been coached well enough, and there are some definite concerns 2 weeks in. For Seattle, I saw so much improvement in play calling from weeks 1 to 2. They used I think in their plays in week 1, they only used play action 4% of the time, which was like 32nd in the league. Not something you'd expect from a Clint Kubiak offense. And in week 2, they used it like 32% of the time. Good for 6th in the league up until Monday Night Football. That's a lot more encouraging play calling wise, and considering the offense that they have and the personnel they have. And I think I'm excited to see how Sam Darnold and this offense can gel better throughout the season. They used Torrey Horton in week 2 when they didn't in week 1, which I liked a lot. I liked how they used JSN to open up a deep ball for Torrey Horton. And Mike McDonald's always going to coach a good defense. He's my favorite defensive play caller in the league for a reason. And Byron Murphy II, one of the guys that I personally thought would be a breakout candidate this year. has looked really good 2 weeks in. And with all this talk of the Steelers defense, it's going to lead me to my next game with the Jets and the Bills. But the Steelers defense allowed the Jets offense to run all over them in week 1. And then in week 2, they get almost shut out until Tyrod Taylor comes in. There's definite concern with the Steelers defense and their rushing defense specifically. And I don't know how much Derek Harmon, coming back from his injury as a rookie defensive tackle, can help fix that. Then talking about the Jets and the Bills, we'll talk about the Jets real quick because that was the team that played the Steelers in week 1. Their offense really showed in week 1. There is talent there. When they have a rushing attack going, they can be really good. Fields can be really good. And Fields played probably the best game of his career in week 1. He's up there. It's up there. I think the connection with Garrett Wilson's still there. I think the offensive line in week 1 showed a lot. And maybe it's more of an indicator of the Steelers because Armin McBow shut TJ Watt down on a ton of plays in week 1 and struggled in week 2 against an older Joey Bosa. I think the Jets offensive line 2 weeks in has showed promise. Joe Tippmann, John Simpson, who they're going to probably have to figure out a long-term answer for eventually, but still is a good player now. And then Mimbo has showed in 2 weeks in a lot of promise. I know he struggled against Joey Bosa, but that's what happens with a rookie tackle. Fashanu is who I'm concerned about because he has struggled a lot 2 weeks in. I really want to see his game grow as a former top 10 pick, a guy that got better as the season went on last year. Then you look at the Bills, and this is where I can't really take away much. With the Ravens game, you definitely had concerns defensively. And that's really the only game right now you can take anything from because the Jets, they're a better team than the Jets. What you can take away from that game is Keon Coleman looked better. The offensive line is still a top 5 unit. Josh Allen is a miracle worker, and obviously Josh Allen, he's top 3 quarterback in football and one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. Simple as that. I think defensively, you're not going to really have a test for a while because they have the easiest schedule in the league over the next, 7-8 weeks? They could realistically start the season 10-0. Seriously. I think, and then one more thing with the Jets too, before I finish talking about the Jets and the Bills. Breece Hall looked better in week 1, and after an offseason where a lot of people talked about it, he was going to get a starting job taken and all that. He looked really good in week 1. But in week 2, you definitely saw Breece Hall of the old. The rushing lanes just weren't there for him. And without Breece Hall and Braylon Allen going, I don't think this Jets offense can get much going. Saints 49ers. With the Saints, I think Spencer Rattler has shown promise within 2 weeks. I don't know what the franchise quarterback potential is there, but I do know that he has looked good. I do know that there is something there to be interested in, and it does make me question the Tyler Shuck pick, considering that was a top 40 pick. Top 40 pick, by the way. Sorry. And he's not starting as a 25-year-old rookie. Sorry. Moving on. I think Olave has already taken hits, but the connection's there. Kamara and Rattler's connection improved from week 1 to week 2, where he was looking for him in the passing game, and he didn't do that in week 1, so that's exciting. I think Kamara still looks like the running back you want him to be. Defensively, they've shown a lot. I know they didn't get to they aren't pressuring the quarterback the way you want them to. They aren't having any mind-blowing pressure numbers, but they are sacking the quarterback, and that within 2 weeks, which is interesting to say the least. Maybe that doesn't indicate long-term success defensively, but it does show something. And then Kelvin Banks has played pretty good, considering the fact he played against Josh Sweat and Nick Bosa 2 weeks in, and I think he's showed promise within his first 2 games that you can feel confident in him long-term. Obviously, don't want to make definitive statements about players 2 games into their career, but I've liked what I've seen. With the 49ers, there's so much to, how would you say this? The injuries have already piled up with George Kittle and Brock Purdy out for a few weeks, and that's definitely concerning. But they are 2-0. They have the easiest schedule in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey's currently healthy. Ricky Parcells looked fine 2 weeks in. Juwan Jennings has looked fine 2 weeks in, and their defense has been solid 2 weeks in. Bosa still playing at the level you want him to. Fred Warner has been easily, by far and away, the best linebacker in football. By far and away. So, I don't know what to take from this 49ers team other than they could easily be a playoff team if things get right health-wise with their schedule. Ravens-Browns. For the Browns, I think this is what the offense was going to look like. Flacco's going to throw for a lot of yards. I think their offensive line needs significant rebuilding in the long term. Their guys are older and have shown decline over the last few years. They got Quinshon Judkins back this week. He had a decent rookie debut. I think the passing offense is going to be there. I think the things to take note of for this offense is what they're going to look like long term, and it's going to be a lot of 12-man personnel if Njoku can stay healthy in the long run. And Fannin has looked good 2 weeks in. There is things to like about Stefanski's coaching and things to like with the talent they have right now, and obvious concerns for their roster, but they have the assets to keep building. They just got to get out of that Deshaun contract. Defensively, they're not great, but Schwechweger has looked really, really good, and especially in his debut. He looked really, really good against the Bengals. Myles Garrett, they really shine against the Bengals defensively. I think, obviously, against the Ravens, it's going to be a different game with Lamar Jackson and a better defense than the Bengals have, and Ravens start seasons better than the Bengals do. They just do. The Ravens, speaking of starting seasons, week 1 was rough. I mean, you blew the game the way you did. You gave Lamar one chance to really have the ball in his hands, up 14 once the ball was snapped, and that's just dumb. I know Derrick Henry fumbled the ball, but you got to trust your guys. You got to trust a top 10 running back of all time and a 2-time MVP quarterback to get that first down on the 4th down. And you just didn't. And you put it in the hands of your defense that already let up, 40 points at that point in the day? That was just a bad call by Harbaugh. Week 2, and I know the Browns aren't the perfect test of Super Bowl contention, but I think they looked better defensively, specifically Roquan Smith. He struggled in week 1. I think they looked better defensively. Not having Kyle Van Noy for a bit's going to hurt. But Odafe Oweh, Mike Green, they have the pieces and investment there that they can put together a good pass rush, especially considering the personnel that they've always put together, or the defenses they've put together over the last few years. Nate Wiggins showed a lot in week 2 that makes me confident in him. It's just how much of these guys are going to show up against more difficult opponents. And we'll see that test over the next few weeks when they play the Lions and the Chiefs. Dolphins, Patriots. Starting with the Dolphins, I think everyone felt discouraged about how the Dolphins were going to be after week 1, or just thought they were horrid. And I didn't think Tua was good at all. I think Tyreek, it's awkward there with him in this team. I think the defense 2 weeks in now has shown, not just the secondary. I think the front 7 has just looked extremely disappointing to where we thought they could be. I'll talk about them in just a minute, but offensively in week 2, I think they showed they are capable of still having a somewhat explosive offense. They scored 27 points. I think they are 0-2. This is not going to be a season where they're a contender or playoff contender by any means, but I think this is a season where you have to rebuild your own identity, and whether that means you move on from GM Chris Grier and coach Mike McDaniel, maybe that's what that means. Maybe that's what you do. Or maybe it means you're developing your personnel. Either way, you have to develop a new identity and go in a new direction, something that you needed to do last offseason. So maybe this is just a ticking clock to the end of the season, and Black Monday, McDaniel and Grier are fired. We'll see. For now, they still have to play another 15 games. Defensively, they have also, I want to make this point real quick, 4 first-round picks on that defensive line, and then on top of that, you have a top-paid defensive tackle. They need to be better. I get the DBs are awful, but they aren't producing the pressure and getting the quarterback the way that you really need them to. They look better in week 2, especially in the first half, but they aren't helping the DBs whatsoever. And the DBs are bad. They are the worst part of this team, but it's not like the front 7's doing any help, giving them any help. For the Patriots, I think Vrabel in week 2 coached a much better game than he did in week 1. The Patriots did not look like they were the high-energy team that you thought Vrabel was going to have them be in week 1. Week 2, they did look like that team. Special teams, they looked good. Defensively, they locked down in the second half. And offensively, I think Drake May has looked like the best second-year quarterback so far. I think Drake May has looked really, really good. Or specifically in the Dolphins game, he looked really good. And I know that defense, a lot of guys can look good against him. But considering the talent that is around him, I think he looked really good. I think Will Campbell had a rough debut, but he was playing Max Crosby a bit. So in week 2, I think he looked a lot better. And I think he allowed 0 pressures and 0 sacks. So I think the Patriots obviously are still in a rebuilding mode, but I felt a lot more confident in them coming out of week 2. Then we move on to Cardinals-Panthers. For the Cardinals, I think defensively, there isn't the biggest test to see what they look like considering that they played the Panthers and the Saints. But I think their defense has shown improvement, especially in the pass rush 2 games in so far. Josh Sweat looks like a good addition. Calais Campbell's looked really good so far. I want to see what Walter Nolan looks like with this defense. Will Johnson, I think, was a steal. He's looked great 2 games in. And I know they had some cornerback injuries against the Panthers, but it looks like things are going to be okay. I think one of their starting corners will be out for a while, but outside of that, the others will be fine. Will Johnson has looked great 2 games into his career. I don't want to make definitive statements about rookies, but he's looked great so far. And I'm really, really, really excited to see how the rest of the year plays out for him, because I was a big fan of him at Michigan and really, really thought he could have been a top 10 pick considering the talent that was there. Offensively, they need to pass the ball more often. They need to have a more efficient passing offense and need to get more involved in the passing game. It just has not happened yet. The 2 games in look like the exact same offense from last year, and that concerns me a little bit. Again, just 2 games in, but it concerns me just a little bit that Marv has not been involved as much as you've wanted him to. I think in week 1, they did show that with Kyler and Marv, but I think Drew Pearson hasn't called it enough for the receivers, even outside of Marv. For the Panthers, I think defensively, you've sort of gotten torn to shreds the first 2 weeks in, especially in week 1 against the Jags. Travis Etienne averaged like 9 yards a carry. That's concerning, considering that was the big issue last year. You were the worst rushing defense, and you added back Derek Brown. I think they'll get better defensively as the season goes on. The first game and a half for the Panthers, I had some concerns, specifically considering that they couldn't really get anything going offensively. But in that second half against the Cardinals, when they came back and made it a really close game, I really liked what I saw from Bryce Young and thought that's the Bryce Young I saw last year. I am concerned for the receiving core. Xavier Legette has looked absolutely atrocious 2 games into this year, and again, there's a lot of season left to play, but he has not had touch with his routes. He can't track the sideline, and he can't create after the catch. Ted O'Rourke McMillan has looked incredible 2 games into his career, absolutely incredible, and he's going to be Bryce's guy for a while. And I hope Jalen Coker can come back and make this passing game much more acceptable, because right now they are struggling. Denver Colts. Starting with Denver, I don't think Bo Nix has looked like the quarterback we've wanted him to look like, or we thought he could look like 2 weeks in, and the way that he did in the last half of 2024. I don't think it's massively concerning, but it is something to note. The rushing attack has looked better. I think J.K. Dobbins is definitely a step up from what they've had last year. I think the passing attack definitely needs to improve. Even if they're somewhat efficient, I don't think they're getting the results they want. They're 1-1, so it's just 2 weeks in. They'll improve over time probably. It's Sean Payton. He really does. Once the trade deadline hits, or once we get halfway through the year, Sean Payton turns things up a notch and takes the safety wheels off a lot. Or maybe he puts them on extra. I don't know. Defensively, they've looked pretty good. I think their big thing is they're missing Dre Greenlaw, and once he gets in there, I think they'll be better. For the Colts, 2 weeks in, I think they're one of the biggest winners 2 weeks in already. They're one of the most talked about teams, and teams that people are excited about, because Daniel Jones has looked good. This offense has looked good. And that's not what anyone thought going in the year. Daniel Jones, the advanced stats show that this could be sustainable. The way Denver played against him and the way Denver plays against everyone else, it shows that Daniel Jones, that was just him. A lot of it has been improved play calling. I think Tyler Warren was the missing puzzle piece for this offense. If there was one team in 2024, I thought a tight end would be massive for this offense. It was Indianapolis. And Tyler Warren, 2 weeks in, has looked like one of the best tight ends in the NFL. He's their leading receiver right now. He's been the guy. And Jonathan Taylor has looked really good. The offensive line has held up really good. And the defense, the addition of Cameron Bynum, Chardavius Ward looked really good in week 1. He was out week 2. They were good in the games they played. Cameron Bynum has a pick in both games already. I think the pass rush has not gotten to the quarterback as much as you've wanted it to, but Lou Anarumo has obviously caught up 2 good defenses so far, to where now they're 2-0. We move on to our Super Bowl rematch, Chiefs-Eagles, and we'll start with the Chiefs because that's where I have the most concerns. With the Chiefs, Mahomes has had to play hero ball offensively, bail out Andy Reid's bad play calling, bail out Travis Kelce struggling, and the rushing attack being absolutely horrid. Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt have not been good. Travis Kelce was really bad against the Chargers, even if he had a touchdown. And then against the Eagles, he was good until he dropped a pass in the red zone. That turned into a pick where he had no effort on trying to stop the return. I am very frustrated with how Kelce's played 2 games in, and this offense desperately needs Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice back and healthy. I think the offensive line has looked better, though. Josh Simmons has looked really good 2 games in. Defensively, George Karlaftis has struggled after his big payday. Nick Bolton has been really bad for a while, but even worse now. Jalen Watson has struggled a bit, but I think he's fine filling that cornerback 2 spot. It's just the talent all around is just depleted. I think Jaden Hicks has struggled to fill the role that Justin Reed once filled. All around, I'm disappointed with what I've seen from the Chiefs defense and offense. Mahomes, I don't think any quarterback could be enough to bring him over the hump right now. I really hope that for the Chiefs fans' sake, they come out of these next few games 1-3, 2-2, because they need a miracle right now. For the Eagles, Kevin Patullo, their offensive coordinator, hasn't had a great start as a play caller, but they are 2-0. It's not the end of the world. I just want to see more from this passing attack. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown have not been involved as much as you want them to. And yeah, they just play really conservative to a point where maybe it catches up on them later in the year if they don't figure things out passing attack-wise. Defensively, I think Adoree Jackson's pretty much their only weakness right now. I think their defensive line, although thinner than previous years, has looked pretty good. Jod Campbell's looked really good next to Zach Bond, and their other DBs have picked up right where they left off. We move on to Sunday Night Football and Falcons-Vikings. We'll start with the Falcons because I was really, really impressed by their defense. They have a pass rush now, something they haven't had in a long time. James Pierce Jr., who I was skeptical of trading a first-round pick to go up and get, I was really impressed with him. I was unsure of giving up a first-round pick in another year to go out and get a guy that I wasn't the highest on, but he's looked really good. And then Jalen Walker. I know he's a developmental project, but he showed the tools 2 weeks in so far. I know we can't determine these guys' careers 2 games into their career, but they've looked really good together. Xavier Watts has also looked really good next to Jesse Bates, and that has been really exciting to see because I was really, really high on him, and him falling the way he did was a little weird to me. I thought he'd go early in the second round. Billy Bowman, another guy that went lower than I was expecting because I liked Bowman a lot at Oklahoma, looked really good against the Vikings. All around, I think this Falcons defense incredibly impressed. Their offense, I think, needs to get better passing attack-wise, and they need to design a better rushing game for Bijan and Tyler Algier to run between the tackles. I know they're without Caleb McGarry, but I want to see that. And then for the Vikings, I was really impressed in week 1 from how J.J. McCarthy played in the fourth quarter. But in the other 7 quarters he's played so far in the NFL, I think I've been a little underwhelmed. I can't write him off. He's going to be hurt for the next 2 weeks. And I think this entire year is just about getting J.J. McCarthy comfortable and fully adapted to the NFL. And that's going to take some time. So I'm not writing him off. I really like what I saw in that fourth quarter. And I'm excited to see what he looks like when he's back healthy. This Vikings team is a little different. I like the defense a lot. I like some of the additions they've made with Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. But again, this entire year is just about getting J.J. McCarthy to a place where he can be your long-term starter of the future. Finishing things off with the Monday night game, Bucs-Texans. I think the Texans 2 weeks in, their offensive line has struggled bad, especially in week 1. They were bad. But I think C.J. Stroud was given a chance in week 2 to put the Texans in a position to win, and he didn't. He definitely struggled against the Bucs. In that second half, it was just bad. It was flat out bad play from C.J. Stroud. He needed to play better for them to win, and he was given the opportunity from his offensive line. I think the thing to be fair to C.J. Stroud, though, is they have not produced anything near a good rushing attack. And I think the play calling is the exact same way it was last year. They got a guy that was from the McVay tree because I think Stroud fits better there. He's better as a fielder, not just as a guy that listens to the coach and plays under center and does what he does. I think Stroud's better at the offensive line, or better right before the snap, looking at the field, calling out audibles, adjusting to the offense, having a McVay type of system where he can be the superstar quarterback and also have that Shanahan tree, zone running. You get what I'm saying. I think they haven't really had that so far. Their play calling has been the exact same way as it was last year. And all around, I think this offense has just not looked efficient. Defensively, they've looked great. I have no other notes on that. The Bucs, they definitely missed their starting offensive line, and that showed in the second half of this game. That showed in week 1 against Atlanta. But Baker pulled out the win both times, and you got to feel confident once your offensive line gets healthy that you're still going to be a playoff team. I don't know what the ceiling is for this team. I don't know. I don't really think it's Super Bowl. But I think, like the last 2 years, they're still going to be a playoff team. Our final game of the week, Chargers-Raiders. I'll start with the Raiders. I think 2 weeks in, I feel I think the most concerning thing is their offensive play calling. It just has not been good. Taking Ashton Jeanty off the field on every third down when he is the idealistic third down back and he's a top 10 pick, it's just bad. It doesn't make sense. I think they haven't designed a good enough passing offense. Their offensive line, in my video, I talked about how I think it can be efficient. I think it's been fine. The run blocking has been okay, but it hasn't been to the level that you've wanted it to. I think in week 2, it hurt not having Jackson Powers-Johnson and having Alex Kappa in there, who, like I mentioned, was the worst starting guard in the NFL last year. I think that limits your rushing attack, but they gave Ashton Jeanty 11 handoffs in week 2. That's just inexcusable play calling. Geno Smith has not looked great, but I think it's a mix of bad play calling and Geno it was great Chargers play calling. Forcing Geno to be the high stakes guy he is, throwing it downfield constantly. They played him to their game. And the Chargers 2 weeks in, I wasn't concerned with the defense. I was concerned with the offense, and not Justin Herbert or the receivers. I was concerned a little bit with the offensive line, considering their starting left tackle and most paid left tackle in the league is out for the year. I was concerned with the play calling, though. Greg Roman specifically, and he 2 games in has called a really efficient passing attack that feels a lot more modern than anything he has called in his entire career. I've liked it. I think it just showed off Justin Herbert's ability, and Justin Herbert scrambling adds a different component to this offense. The rushing attack definitely needs to improve as the season goes on, but I think it's more so of a factor of their interior offensive line injuries than their running backs not being great. The last thing I'll say is Joe Alt. Not the last thing. 2 more things. Joe Alt has looked really, really stellar. That's 1. Number 2, we don't know what the Khalil Mack injury looks like yet, but just Jesse Minter has called up a great defense 2 weeks in a row and is a serious head coaching candidate for next year. And that's every team through week 2, through a game-by-game basis, talking about week 2. I hope y'all enjoyed. If y'all think I missed anything, if you don't agree with any of my opinions, that's fine. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to talk about it. I plan on doing some videos specifically on teams soon. And the Bears is one I have in mind because of Ryan Poles. Anyways, this is Son of a Sports. I'll catch y'all next time.